For years, I stayed silent, letting them call me a failure, because one wrong move could crash my entire company. They thought I was nothing, a shadow who drifted through life without a purpose. My family sent me an invitation to prove it, a cream-colored envelope tucked carelessly between a pizza coupon and a charity flyer in my mailbox, as if it didn't matter whether I found it. I turned it over, my fingers brushing the embossed logo of my father's real estate firm, a golden bee glowing faintly under the fluorescent light of my apartment lobby. Below it, the words, "You are cordially invited to celebrate Edward Bennett's 25th anniversary as Chicago's premier developer." My name, Laura Bennett, was printed off-center, in a font so small it looked like an afterthought next to my sister Claire's, whose name took up twice the space. Parentheses weren't there, but they might as well have been. Laura Bennett, the optional guest. Back in my apartment, I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter like it was evidence. The space around me was quiet, clean, no clutter, no warmth. A laptop on a glass desk, a single chair, a shelf with a few tech manuals. Everything in its place, like my life had to earn its right to exist. My fingers twitched, a habit from coding late nights. One breath to assess, analyze, dismiss. I hadn't spoken to my father in 2 years. The last time we exchanged words was at Claire's promotion party, where I'd been mistaken for a caterer by a guest. Now this invitation. I walked to the window, where city lights bled through the blinds, cold and sharp. My boots tapped softly on the hardwood floor as I crossed to a metal lockbox on the shelf. Inside, a few keepsakes from my startup days, a flash drive from my first pitch, a conference badge, a worn-out keycard from my old office. My gaze lingered on a locked drawer below. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, my mind slipped back to a memory, colder than the Chicago winter outside. I was 9, curled up in the corner of our family's garage, knees tucked tight, breath fogging in the dark. My teeth chattered, the sound bouncing off concrete walls. A thin tarp smelling of oil and dust was my only blanket. The sting of frozen metal from a toolbox pressed against my arm. Outside, I heard the crunch of snow under boots, footsteps that always stopped just before the door. It had been an accident. Claire, my older sister, had broken a crystal vase during a game of tag. I'd been chasing her, laughing, when it shattered, but the blame landed on me. My father's voice was ice, my mother's eyes sharper. 3 nights in the garage, no food, no heat, just silence and their shadows in the driveway. Years later, I graduated top of my class at MIT, computer science. They didn't show up. No call, no note, just an empty seat at the ceremony and a photo of me smiling at nothing. If this story resonates, don't forget to like, share, and tell us how you feel in the comments. Type 1 if you felt understood, or 2 if something still feels unfinished. The invitation sat on the counter, untouched, as Laura Bennett powered up her laptop. The screen glowed blue, casting sharp shadows across her face. Her apartment in Chicago's West Loop was a fortress of minimalism. White walls, a single potted plant, a coffee maker that hadn't been used in weeks. She opened her email, fingers moving with the precision of someone who'd spent years coding under pressure. Her startup, Nexus Labs, was her life's work, a cybersecurity firm that operated in the shadows, securing data for clients who paid for discretion. She'd built it from a dorm room, bootstrapped with sleepless nights and borrowed laptops, until it became a name whispered in Silicon Valley boardrooms. But to her family, she was still the girl who broke things. An alert pinged, a red flag in her company's dashboard, an unauthorized login attempt on Nexus Labs' secure server. Her pulse quickened, but her hand stayed steady. She clicked through the logs, eyes scanning lines of code and timestamps. The intrusion was clean, almost surgical, but it left a trace, an IP address she recognized instantly. It was from her father's house in Evanston, the same network she'd used as a kid to download music. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't a random hack. She opened a secure chat and pinged Rachel Coleman, her childhood friend who now ran a tech blog with a knack for digging up dirt. Rachel's reply was instant. "What's up? You look spooked." Laura typed back, "Someone tried to breach my server. Trace leads to my dad's house." Rachel's response was a string of question marks. Then, "Edward? Seriously? Meet me tomorrow, coffee shop on Clark Street." Laura closed the chat and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside, indifferent. She thought about her father, Edward Bennett, a man who built shopping malls and shook hands with mayors, always with a smile that never reached his eyes. Her sister Claire, the golden child, was his protégé, climbing the ranks of his company while Laura was written off as the dreamer who'd never amount to anything. She opened another tab, pulling up Nexus Labs' client list, names no one outside the firm would ever see. Government agencies, Fortune 500 companies, a few overseas banks. If someone was using her credentials, they weren't just after money, they were after power. She dialed James Porter, her lead engineer and the only person at Nexus Labs she trusted completely. His voice crackled through the line, groggy but alert. "Laura, it's midnight. What's wrong?" She didn't waste words. "We've got a breach. Someone used my admin credentials, IP traces to Evanston, my family's router." James paused, then muttered, "That's not good. I'm pulling the logs now. Meet me at the office in an hour." She hung up, grabbed her jacket, and headed out into the night. The Nexus Labs office was a sleek, glass-walled space in downtown Chicago, hidden behind a co-working facade to keep prying eyes away. Laura swiped her keycard, the door hissing open. James was already there, hunched over a monitor, his hoodie sleeves rolled up. "Got something?" he said without looking up. "The breach hit our secondary server, tried to access client contracts. They used your digital signature, Laura, not just your login, but your full encryption key." Her jaw tightened. "That's impossible. My key's locked in a vault." James spun his screen toward her. "Look at this. The access came through a civilian VPN, but the metadata screams familiarity. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for." Laura leaned in, eyes narrowing at the timestamp. 2:17 a.m., the night before her father's anniversary gala was announced. She cross-referenced the device ID. It was Claire's tablet, active on the same network. Her sister, the one who'd always smiled while their parents tore Laura down. "This isn't a coincidence," Laura said, voice low. "Claire's involved." James raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "We need to trace the data flow. If they got your key, they either hacked our vault, which I doubt, or someone close to you got access." Laura's mind flashed to the gala invitation. She hadn't planned to go, but now it felt like a setup. She grabbed her phone and texted Rachel, "Need you to dig into Claire's recent deals, anything tied to Edward's firm." Rachel replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a promise to deliver by morning. Laura turned back to James. "Set up a dummy file, make it look like a high-value contract, something irresistible. We're gonna bait them." James nodded, already typing. "Got it. Operation Trapdoor. I'll code it to ping us the second someone bites." Laura stepped to the window, the Chicago skyline glittering below. For years, she'd let her family believe she was a nobody, a failed coder scraping by. They didn't know about the Pentagon contract she'd secured at 25, or the encryption algorithm she'd built that stopped a data leak in London. She'd stayed silent because her work demanded it. One leak could tank Nexus Labs. But now, someone was using her own tools against her, and the trail led straight to her blood. The coffee shop on Clark Street smelled of burnt espresso and damp coats. Rachel slid into the booth across from Laura, her laptop already open. "You look like you haven't slept," Rachel said, pushing a latte toward her. Laura ignored the cup. "What'd you find?" Rachel's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up a spreadsheet. "Claire's been busy. She signed a deal last week with a shady tech firm, Horizon Dynamics. They're small, but they've got ties to some sketchy offshore accounts. Guess who's on their advisory board? Laura didn't need to guess. Edward. Rachel nodded. Your dad's been funneling money through them, using Claire as the front. But here's the kicker. The deal references a proprietary algorithm. Sounds a lot like your work. Laura's hands clenched under the table. Her algorithm, the one she'd spent years perfecting, was the backbone of Nexus Labs' security. If Claire and Edward had stolen it, they weren't just betraying her. They were risking national security. I need proof, Laura said. Rachel smirked. Already on it. I've got a contact at Horizon. They're sloppy with their email servers. Give me 2 days. I'll get you something solid. Laura nodded, her mind already racing to the gala. She'd go, not to celebrate, but to watch, to see their faces when they realized she wasn't invisible anymore. Back at her apartment, she opened her closet and pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a tailored black blazer, sharp and unassuming, the kind worn by consultants or analysts, someone who blends in but sees everything. She laid it on the bed, smoothing the fabric with her palm. Then she zipped it back up. She wouldn't need flash for this. Instead, she grabbed a plain gray suit, professional, anonymous, the kind of outfit that said, I'm here, but you won't touch me. As she changed, she thought about what this gala really meant, not for Edward, but for everyone else. The mayor would be there, local press, business elites, and Claire, no doubt basking in her father's glow. They wouldn't expect Laura. They probably thought she'd toss the invitation and stay gone. After all, what did she have to show? The daughter who wandered off, who never settled, who chose code over family? They didn't know about the nights she'd spent debugging servers to stop breaches, or the clients who called her at 3 a.m. because she was the only one they trusted. She moved to a safe in the corner of her room, a steel box bolted to the floor. 1 turn left, 2 right. It clicked open. Inside was a small black case labeled Nexus Labs Proprietary, Laura Bennett, founder. Her name was etched, centered, permanent. She tapped the edge once, then shut the safe. If they want a name to mock, she said softly, they're about to learn how to spell it. The gala was held at a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, all glass chandeliers and polished marble. Laura arrived late, slipping through the crowd unnoticed. Edward stood at the center, his suit pristine, shaking hands with a state senator. Claire hovered nearby, her smile practiced, her dress catching every light. Laura stayed near the bar, her gray suit blending with the staff. She scanned the room, cataloging faces, exits, habits, a reflex from years of assessing risks. Her phone buzzed. James, dummy files live. Someone's already sniffing it. Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. She typed back, track every move. I want their location. A waiter offered her a drink. She waved it off, her eyes locked on Claire, who was laughing with a group of investors. Laura's mind drifted to another memory, sharper now. She was 12, sitting at the family dinner table, her report card ignored while Claire's was framed. Edward had said, Claire's got a future. Laura, you need to focus. Her mother, Margaret, had nodded, not meeting her eyes. That night, Laura had coded her first program, a simple game, nothing special, but it was hers. She'd shown it to her parents, hoping for a glance. They didn't look. Now, her phone buzzed again. Rachel found something. Claire's tablet accessed a Horizon server last night, sent you a log. Laura opened the attachment, her heart pounding. The log showed Claire downloading a file labeled Nexus Algorithm. It was her work, her code, her life. She forwarded it to James with one word, trap. The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. Laura stepped outside to the patio, where the city skyline glittered in the distance. She thought about the garage, the cold, the silence that taught her to shrink. She wasn't that girl anymore. Her phone lit up again. James. They took the bait. File accessed 10 minutes ago. Trace confirms it's your family's network. Laura exhaled, her breath visible in the night air. She wasn't just fighting for her company now, she was fighting for her name. Laura Bennett stood on the patio of the Lake Forest estate, the gallus chatter fading into a dull hum behind her. The Chicago skyline blinked in the distance, a reminder of the world she'd built beyond her family's reach. Her phone glowed with James Porter's message. The dummy file had been accessed, the trap sprung. The trace confirmed it. Someone on her family's network, likely Claire, had taken the bait. Laura's fingers tightened around the device, her breath steady but sharp. She wasn't just dealing with a breach anymore. This was personal, a betrayal coded in her own digital signature. She slipped back into the gala, weaving through the crowd of suits and sequins. Edward Bennett held court near a marble fountain, his laugh loud, practiced as he toasted with the mayor. Claire stood beside him, her earrings catching the light, her smile a mirror of their father's. Laura kept her distance, her gray suit blending with the shadows. She caught Claire's eye for a moment, a flicker of recognition, then dismissal. Laura's chest tightened, but she pushed it down. She'd learned long ago to bury emotions under logic. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel Coleman, got something big. Horizon Dynamics sent Claire an encrypted contract. It's got your algorithm's fingerprints all over it. Meet me at the diner on Route 14, 8 a.m. Laura pocketed the phone and moved toward the exit. She didn't need to stay longer. The gala wasn't about celebration. It was a stage, and she was done playing the invisible guest. Back in her apartment, Laura opened her laptop, the screen's blue glow cutting through the dark. She pulled up the server logs James had sent. The dummy file, labeled Nexus Contract Alpha, had been downloaded at 9:43 p.m., right in the middle of the gala. The IP address was unmistakable, Edward's home network, the same one Laura had once used to debug her first app. She cross-referenced the device ID, Claire's tablet, again, but something else caught her eye. A second device, a laptop registered to Edward's office, had pinged the server minutes later. Her father wasn't just complicit, he was in deep. Laura leaned back, her mind racing. Nexus Labs' algorithm was her creation, a cybersecurity shield that protected billions in transactions. If Edward and Claire had sold it to Horizon Dynamics, they weren't just stealing her work, they were risking her company's reputation and her clients' trust. She texted James, lock down all admin access. I want a full audit of every file touched in the last 72 hours. His reply was instant. On it. You going to the gala tomorrow? Laura hesitated, then typed, yes, but not for them. She opened her closet, bypassing the gray suit for something sharper, a black blazer, tailored, professional, the kind that said power without shouting it. She laid it on the bed, her fingers smoothing the fabric like a ritual. Then she turned to the safe, unlocking it with a quick twist. The black case inside read, Nexus Labs Proprietary, Laura Bennett, founder. She didn't open it, not yet, but its weight grounded her, a reminder of what she'd built despite them. The diner on Route 14 smelled of grease and stale coffee, its neon sign flickering in the morning fog. Rachel slid into the booth across from Laura, her laptop already open, a mug of black coffee steaming between them. You look like you're plotting a coup, Rachel said, half smiling. Laura didn't laugh. What's in the contract? Rachel pushed a printout across the table. Horizon Dynamics paid Claire's shell company $2 million for consulting services. But the fine print mentions a proprietary encryption protocol. It's your algorithm, Laura, word for word, down to the variable names. Laura's eyes scanned the document, her pulse spiking. The algorithm was her life work, coded during sleepless nights in a cramped MIT dorm. She'd never shared it, not even with her team. "How did they get it?" she asked, voice low. Rachel leaned in. "Claire's been cozying up to one of your old interns. He's at Horizon now, probably leaked a fragment." But the full code? That had to come from someone with access to your server. Laura's mind flashed to Edward's laptop, the second device in the logs. Her father had always preached loyalty, but only when it served him. She remembered a summer when she was 14, helping in his office, organizing files while Claire got private lunches with clients. Edward had caught Laura reading a contract, snapped at her to stick to stapling. "You're not cut out for this," he'd said. She'd gone home and coded a database that night, faster than his entire team. He never knew. Now, Rachel slid another paper across. "There's more. Edward's been pitching your algorithm as his own to investors. He's claiming Claire developed it." Laura's hands clenched, the paper crumpling slightly. "I need proof they used my credentials," she said. Rachel nodded. "I'm hacking their email server tonight. If there's a trail, I'll find it." The gala's second night was louder, brighter, with string lights draped across the estate's lawn. Laura arrived in her black blazer, her presence quiet but deliberate. She scanned the crowd, Edward shaking hands with a tech CEO, Claire charming a group of reporters, her mother Margaret watching from a corner, her face unreadable. Laura stayed near the edge, her phone synced to James's real-time alerts. Then it happened. A low rumble cut through the jazz band's melody, heads turning as a sleek black van rolled onto the lawn, its side emblazoned with Tech Innovators Award. The crowd parted, murmuring, as James Porter stepped out, his usual hoodie traded for a crisp suit. He adjusted his glasses, eyes locking on Laura. "Laura Bennett," he said, voice carrying over the murmurs, founder of Nexus Labs, named Innovator of the Year by the National Tech Council. Gasps rippled through the guests. Edward froze, his champagne flute tilting in his hand. Claire's smile faltered, her eyes darting to Laura. James continued, "We're here to present her with this recognition, live, for her groundbreaking work in cybersecurity." He held up a glass plaque, Laura's name etched in silver. The crowd clapped, hesitant at first, then louder as cameras flashed. Laura stepped forward, her movements precise, and accepted the plaque. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the noise. She met Edward's gaze for a moment, his face pale, his jaw twitching. Margaret took a step toward her, then stopped, her hand hovering as if unsure what to hold on to. Claire turned away, whispering to a reporter. Laura didn't care. She'd come to be seen, and now they couldn't look away. As the van pulled away, Laura's phone buzzed. Rachel got the email. "Edward instructed Claire to use your credentials. Audio file coming." Laura slipped into a quiet corner of the estate, her heart pounding. She played the file. Edward's voice, low and clipped. "Laura's a nobody. Use her login. It won't trace back. She'll never know." The words hit like a punch, but Laura didn't flinch. She forwarded the audio to Rachel with a single line, "This goes public." Back at the Nexus Labs office, James was waiting, his monitor displaying a new alert. "They tried the dummy file again," he said. "This time it's Edward's laptop, direct access. He's getting sloppy." Laura sat down, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She pulled up the contract Rachel had sent, cross-referencing it with the server logs. Every line confirmed it. Edward and Claire had sold her algorithm to Horizon Dynamics, using her credentials to cover their tracks. "They thought I'd stay quiet," Laura said, her voice cold. James looked at her. "What's the play?" She didn't hesitate. "We expose them. Rachel's got enough for a story. I want it out before the gala ends tomorrow." James nodded, already coding a secure upload link for Rachel. Laura stood, the plaque still in her hand. She thought about the garage, the tarp, the cold that had taught her to disappear. She wasn't disappearing anymore. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel, stories drafted. It's explosive. You sure? Laura typed back. Do it. Let them burn. The next morning, Rachel's tech blog dropped the article, The Hidden Founder, How Laura Bennett's Family Stole Her Legacy. It detailed Nexus Labs' rise, Laura's algorithm, and the betrayal, backed by timestamps, emails, and Edward's damning audio. By noon, it had 1 million views. Tech forums lit up, analysts dissected the story, and Twitter erupted with hashtags, #LauraBennett, #NexusLabs. Laura watched from her apartment, the city's hum a distant echo. Her phone rang. Claire. Laura let it ring twice, then answered. Laura, you didn't have to do this, Claire said, her voice tight. You know how Dad is. This wasn't the place. Laura's reply was flat. He sold my work and called me a nobody. You helped him. Claire stammered. It's business, Laura. If you just stay quiet, this'll blow over. Laura let the silence stretch. You're asking me to disappear again, she said. I'm done with that. She hung up before Claire could respond. Another buzz. Rachel, check the news. Edward's firm just got hit with a fraud inquiry. Laura turned on the TV. A reporter's voice cut through. Edward Bennett, prominent developer, faces allegations of intellectual property theft tied to his daughter's company, Nexus Labs. A clip played. Laura accepting the plaque, Edward's face in the background, frozen in shock. She muted the TV, her lips parting in a breath she hadn't realized she'd held. The plaque sat on her desk, its silver catching the light. For years, she'd let them write her story. Now, she was writing it herself. Laura Bennett sat in her Chicago apartment, the city's skyline a muted glow through the blinds. The TV was off, but the news still echoed in her mind. Edward Bennett, her father, now under a fraud inquiry for stealing her algorithm. Rachel Coleman's article had spread like wildfire, racking up 6 million views in under 24 hours. Twitter was a storm of hashtags, #LauraBennett, #NexusLabs, #TechBetrayal, and tech blogs were dissecting every detail of her family's deception. Laura's phone buzzed relentlessly, but she ignored it, her eyes fixed on the glass plaque from the gala, its silver engraving catching the dim light. She'd won, but victory felt hollow, like a program running without output. Her family hadn't just ignored her, they tried to erase her, using her own code to build their empire. Now, the world knew her name, but the weight of that truth pressed against her ribs. She opened her laptop, pulling up Rachel's latest message. You're trending on Forbes. They want you at their Women in Tech Summit tomorrow. Cover story, Laura. You in? Laura's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her pulse quickening. She typed back, yes, but no interviews yet, just the speech. Rachel's reply was a single emoji, a fire symbol. The Women in Tech Summit was held in a sleek convention center downtown, all glass walls and polished concrete. Laura arrived early, her dress blues, a tailored navy suit with a single silver pin from her MIT days, drawing glances from the crowd. She kept her head down, avoiding the reporters circling like sharks. Rachel met her backstage, her laptop tucked under her arm, her eyes bright with exhaustion. You ready for this? Rachel asked, handing Laura a water bottle. Laura nodded, her throat tight. I've been ready for years. She thought about the garage, the cold nights at 9, the way her parents had locked her out like a stray. That memory used to burn. Now it was fuel. Her phone buzzed again, a text from James Porter. Horizon Dynamics just got slapped with a federal subpoena. Claire's on administrative leave. Laura exhaled, slipping the phone into her pocket. The stage manager waved her over. 5 minutes, Miss Bennett. Laura straightened, her suit crisp, her pin gleaming. She wasn't here to celebrate. She was here to rewrite the story they'd tried to bury. The summit hall was packed, rows of tech founders, investors, and students staring up at the stage. A massive screen behind the podium flashed Forbes' top 100 women in tech. Laura's name was third, her photo, taken at the gala, plaque in hand, projected in sharp focus. The host, a woman in a red blazer, stepped to the mic. Laura Bennett, founder of Nexus Labs, architect of the cybersecurity algorithm that's redefined data protection. Applause rolled through the room, steady, not explosive, but real. Laura stepped into the light, her boots clicking against the stage. She adjusted the mic, her voice calm but unyielding. "For 15 years, I built in silence," she began. "I let others take credit, let them call me a failure because my work demanded discretion. But silence isn't absence, and I'm done hiding." The room went quiet, every eye locked on her. She held up a folder, not a prop, but the real thing, filled with Nexus Labs patents, contracts, and her original code. "This is my work," she said. "It secured billions in transactions, protected lives, and built a company from nothing. My family tried to steal it, to erase me. They failed." Gasps rippled through the front rows. A young woman in a hoodie, probably a coder, wiped her eyes. Laura scanned the crowd, her gaze steady. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here because truth matters, and no one gets to bury it." The applause came harder now, a wave that shook the air. A man in a suit stood, then another, until half the room was on its feet. Laura stepped back, her hands steady, but something inside her cracked open, just a little. Backstage, Rachel was waiting, her phone buzzing with notifications. "You just broke the internet," she said, grinning. "Forbes posted your speech live. It's at 10 million views." Laura didn't smile, but her lips parted slightly, like a breath held too long. Rachel handed her a velvet case. "This came from the summit board. They wanted you to have it now." Laura opened it. Inside was a silver medallion engraved with Forbes Innovator Award. She closed the case without a word, slipping it into her pocket. Rachel tilted her head. "You okay?" Laura nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about her mother, Margaret Bennett, who hadn't reached out since the article dropped. Margaret had always been the silent enforcer, nodding when Edward blamed Laura, turning away when Claire was praised. Laura had stopped expecting apologies years ago, but the silence still stung. Her phone buzzed, a number she hadn't seen in years. Margaret. Laura let it go to voicemail, her fingers trembling just enough to notice. She played the message later, alone in a quiet corner. Margaret's voice was measured, cold. "You didn't have to destroy us, Laura. We were protecting the family." Laura deleted it, her jaw tight. Protecting the family meant locking her out again and again. The news cycle moved fast. By evening, Edward's firm was under a second inquiry, this time for tax fraud tied to Horizon Dynamics. Claire's face was plastered across tech blogs, her LinkedIn profile locked after a flood of comments. Laura watched it unfold from a safe house in Lincoln Park, a nondescript studio leased by Nexus Labs for sensitive projects. James dropped by, carrying a pizza box and a burner phone. "You're a ghost now," he said, half joking. "Press can't find you." Laura took a slice, her eyes on the laptop screen. Good, let them chase Edward instead. James sat across from her, his hoodie swapped for a rare button-up. Internal audit flagged Claire's shell company. They traced payments back to Edward's offshore accounts. Feds are moving in tomorrow. Laura nodded, her expression unreadable. She opened the folder from the summit, flipping through the patents. One page stood out, a contract amendment dated 5 years ago, signed by Edward as a consultant for Nexus Labs' early funding. He'd used that access to siphon her code, claiming it as his own. She remembered the day she'd signed him on, hoping for a shred of approval. He'd smiled, patted her shoulder, then sold her out. He didn't just steal, she said softly. He rewrote me out of my own story. James leaned forward. Then keep writing it. You've got the pen now. The next morning, Laura drove to Evanston, parking a block from her childhood home. The house looked smaller now, its brick facade chipped, the lawn less perfect than she remembered. She walked to the backyard, her boots crunching on frost-covered grass. The garage still stood, its door rusted, the lock dangling loose. She stepped inside, the air thick with mildew and memories. The concrete floor was cracked, the toolbox gone, but the cold was the same. She was 9 again, curled under a tarp, counting her breaths to stay warm. Her parents hadn't checked on her, not once. When they finally let her out, Margaret had said, "Maybe now you'll listen." Laura stood there, her breath fogging, and whispered, "I'm listening now." She pulled a small notebook from her pocket, one she'd kept since MIT. Inside was a single line, written in shaky pen, "Stay quiet, stay safe." She tore the page out, let it fall to the floor, and walked away. The garage didn't creak or cry. It just stood, empty, like the family it belonged to. Back at the safe house, Rachel called, her voice urgent. "Edward's legal team sent a cease and desist to my blog. They're threatening to sue." Laura's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Let them try. We've got the contracts, the audio, the logs." Rachel laughed, sharp and quick. "Already updated the article, added a new clip." Laura opened her laptop, pulling up the blog. The update included a 20-second voicemail from Edward, left on Claire's phone. Laura's always been a problem. "If she talks, bury her deeper." The clip was viral within minutes, comments flooding in. "This guy's a monster. Laura deserves better." Laura leaned back, her hand steady now. She wasn't fighting for revenge. She was fighting for the truth. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She answered, cautious. A man's voice, low and direct. "Ms. Bennett, we have evidence of your father's misconduct. We need your statement." Laura paused, then said, "I'll be there, but I'm bringing my own files." She hung up, her mind clear. The truth wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone she'd inspired. The federal investigator's office was sterile, all gray walls and metal chairs. Laura sat across from a woman in a navy suit, her badge clipped to her belt. "We've traced the payments," the investigator said. "Edward used your credentials to access Nexus Lab servers. Claire executed the transfers. We need your testimony to seal the case." Laura nodded, sliding a folder across the desk. "This is everything. Contracts, logs, my original code. They didn't just steal from me. They endangered my clients." The investigator skimmed the pages, her expression unreadable. "This is enough for charges. You understand this will end your father's career?" Laura met her gaze. "He ended mine first." She left the office, the Chicago wind biting at her face. Her phone buzzed. "Rachel, you're on the Forbes cover. They're calling you the unseen innovator. Check it." Laura opened the link. Her face stared back, not smiling, but resolute, with the headline, "Laura Bennett, the tech titan they tried to erase." She closed the laptop, her chest lighter than it had been in years. The summit's closing ceremony was held in a city square, rebuilt with red bricks and oak benches. Laura stood behind a curtain, her navy suit pressed, the Forbes medallion pinned to her lapel. Rachel stood beside her, phone in hand, no longer recording, just watching. The mayor took the stage, his voice booming. Laura Bennett, who built Nexus Labs from nothing, who stood tall when others tried to bury her. Applause broke out, steady, warm. Laura stepped forward, the crowd a sea of faces, tech students, startup founders, a few kids in school uniforms. She reached the podium, the mic humming softly. I didn't build Nexus Labs for fame, she said. I built it because I had to. Because when you're told you're nothing, you create something undeniable. My family tried to take that from me. They couldn't. The crowd clapped, louder now, a few cheers breaking through. Laura glanced at Rachel, who gave a small nod. Truth isn't loud, Laura continued. It's quiet, persistent. It waits, and when it comes, it changes everything. She stepped back, the medallion catching the sunlight. The mayor handed her a city citation, the first given to a female tech founder in Chicago. For resilience, for truth, he said. Laura took it, her hands steady. After the ceremony, the crowd pressed in, hands reaching out, voices offering thanks. A girl, maybe 10, in a too-big sweater, tugged at Laura's sleeve. "Are you really the one who made Nexus Labs?" she asked, eyes wide. Laura knelt, meeting her gaze. Yes, really. The girl straightened, mimicking a handshake she'd seen adults do. "I want to code like you," she whispered. Laura smiled, just a little. Then, code. Don't let anyone stop you. The girl nodded, her face bright, and ran back to her parents. Laura stood, her chest tight, but not with pain. Rachel appeared, handing her a coffee. "You're a hero now," she said. Laura shook her head. "I'm just me." That night, Laura drove back to Evanston, parking across from her childhood home. The lights were off, the lawn empty, no signs of the protests that had started after Rachel's article. She didn't get out. She didn't need to. The garage was behind her, and so was the girl who'd lived in its shadow. The next morning, a letter arrived at her apartment, no return address, just her name in Margaret's neat cursive. Laura opened it, expecting venom. Instead, a single line. "You won, but you'll always be the girl from the garage." She folded the paper, set it on the counter, and poured a cup of tea. Redemption wasn't applause or medals. It was the quiet of knowing she'd outlived their lies. Later, she met Rachel at a women's tech center across town. Laura handed the director an envelope, a donation large enough to fund scholarships for a year. The director asked for a photo. Laura declined. Some armor never comes off. That afternoon, Rachel spread a folder across Laura's table. "I've got a title," she said, "The Unseen Code." Laura skimmed the pages, stories of women like her, erased but unbroken. "You think anyone will read it?" she asked. Rachel didn't hesitate. "They're already reading you." Laura nodded, her fingers tracing the Forbes medallion. The truth had arrived, not in thunder, but in the quiet click of a keyboard, rewriting a story that was always hers.